Medicinal products and medical devices should be manufactured with a high level of quality to ensure they're fit for purpose. Manufacturers must also ensure patients are not at risk due to inadequate product quality. Providing a quality drug product means manufacturing every dose to be safe, effective, and free from contamination or defects. This is where an appropriate quality management system, QMS, comes in. A QMS that incorporates GXP and quality risk management can monitor the effectiveness of the manufacturing process. Of course, all processes should be fully documented and their effectiveness monitored. A quality system is effective when the manufacturer can identify problems quickly and implement corrective and preventive actions. A key component of any quality system is how you handle non-conformities and/or deviations. Today, we will discuss how to handle these events and how to perform the corresponding investigation, conclusion, and follow-up. To ensure medicinal products and medical devices conform to requirements, customer needs, and regulatory expectations, you need to measure the process parameters during manufacturing. This includes, for example, the control of temperature, time, pH, etc., and the final product attributes, for example, the specifications. Whenever there is a variance detected during the manufacturing process or during quality control analysis, it becomes a non-conformity or a deviation. Specifications are any requirements with which a product, process, service, or other activity must conform. 21 CFR 820.3y. According to the definitions section of the Medical Devices Regulation from the FDA, 21 CFR 820.3, specifications are any requirement with which a product, process, service, or other activity must conform. A non-conformity is a non-fulfillment of a specified requirement. Keep in mind that the use of the word non-conformance has been edited out of ISO guidelines. It is best to use the term non-conformity. Non-conformities can occur in both product and process. As such, non-conforming processes can lead to non-conforming products. This is why these events should be thoroughly investigated to find the root cause and then corrected to avoid reoccurrence. Example of non-conformities. When quality control analysis determines that the purity of a medicinal product does not meet the specifications, the corresponding out-of-specifications result is categorized as a non-conformity. The product will not be approved in this case. Instead, it will be destroyed as there is no way to reprocess it. A deviation is any departure from approved standards, instructions, procedures, or specifications. Ordinarily, deviations are unplanned. There are, however, certain deviations that are planned in advance. Generally speaking, there are two types of deviations: planned and unplanned. Planned deviations are short-term deviations or changes from an existing process or procedure that are intended to run in a controlled manner as part of a new process validation. They are intentional and are pre-approved by quality assurance before execution. It is important to highlight that a planned deviation is not a substitute for the change management process. Examples of planned deviations. When emergency approval is granted by quality assurance to use a new raw material that complies with the specifications due to a qualified material shortage. When the release analysis of a starting material has not been completed. For example, when the results of additional tests, such as microbiological testing, have not been received and a risk must be taken. When a change control request is approved to modify a process parameter, for example, reaction time, as part of a new process validation. when there is a change in batch size not included in the standard procedure. Unplanned deviations correspond to any departure from approved instructions or standards that appear unexpectedly due to a human error, instrument and/or equipment failure, or malfunction. Examples of unplanned deviations: loss of data or documents, for example, when not all blank forms issued have been reconciled. Departure from the approved specifications or procedure, such as when the operator has not followed the written procedure outlined in the batch record for the manufacturing of a medicinal product. An equipment, instrument, or systems breakdown during batch production, for example, a weighing balance shows drift in use. Failure to meet the requirement of an approved dossier or filing, GMF, ANDA, NDA, etc. This could be in the case of a significant deviation from the expected yield during the manufacturing process of an active substance. Unauthorized changes in the facility, document, software, or utility without a change management system, for example, when a manufacturing operator has not met the established time limits for the completion of a production phase. Disruption of energy services. The workflow of a deviation management process may differ from organization to organization, depending on whether the life sciences company uses paper-based or electronic systems. Generally speaking, we can divide deviation process into the following phases. Phase 1. Deviation, non-conformity identification and reporting. Phase 2. Investigation and root cause analysis. Phase 3. Risk assessment. Phase 4. Action plan, CAPAs. Phase 5. CAPA effectiveness checks. Phase 6. Periodic reviews. In the first phase, initial data and evidence are collected. The deviation is documented based on internal policies. At the very least, the following items should be recorded: the name of the observation, the name of the notifier, the date and time, the equipment used, the product affected, the status of the process at the time the event occurred, a short description of the deviation, the type of deviation according to risk assessment principles, and whether any action has already been taken. The use of a checklist or a predefined template is recommended in this phase. The type of event is identified: incident, minor, major, or critical based on risk management system principles, and the root cause is reported if it is clear. This phase is usually one of the most important and the most difficult in the process. If the event is major or critical and the root cause is still unknown, then a full investigation should be performed using root cause analysis tools. Typically, a full root cause analysis is unnecessary if the event is categorized as incident or minor. Once the root cause is assigned, it is time to check whether other batches of the same product or other products could have been affected by the event. Once the root cause analysis is completed and the cause leading to the event is found, appropriate corrective and preventive actions, CAPAs, should be identified and listed in response to the investigation. Corrective actions are taken to prevent recurrence, while preventive actions are taken to prevent deviations and non-conformities. CAPA effectiveness should be monitored and assessed in line with the quality risk management principles at predefined intervals. Periodic reviews continuously monitor whether deviations and non-conformities reoccur. This phase determines the validation status and the actions required to maintain the validated state of systems or equipment, with the goal of showing everything is under control. The monitor data ensures the process remains fit for their intended use. This initial step plays a vital role in the success of the CAPA process. It includes the identification of the product or quality problems that require corrective actions. It also identifies the sources used to classify the issues at play. Current guidelines state that any deviation from instructions or procedures should be avoided as much as possible. However, some planned deviations occur and are allowed with the proper justification. An organization's quality management system should include written procedures and the associated records of action taken for dealing with investigations involving deviations and non-conformities. Employees should be trained to understand the deviation process so they can immediately report when they deviate, make a mistake, or notice something unusual. Employees should report the deviation as soon as it happens, preferably on the date it occurs. It is important to maintain an agile system and act fast to determine the real cause so that you can apply preventive or corrective actions as soon as possible to avoid other issues. Any significant deviations should be fully recorded and investigated, with the objective of determining the root cause and the appropriate corrective and preventive actions. Hydraulics, Chapter 1.8,7. If a deviation occurs, it should be identified and reported by the personnel involved in the relevant process. Only specific qualified people should issue the event. For example, if a deviation has occurred in the warehouse, the operator must inform the responsible person, who will report the issue to the warehouse manager. The warehouse manager will then register the deviation non-conformity and report it to quality assurance based on the organization's procedure. The report can be prepared using a paper-based system, or you can streamline the entire deviation management process using an electronic system such as an eQMS. This report will be approved by a competent person, usually the QA manager. In the absence of a QA manager, a responsible backup can take care of and evaluate the report. Important: all deviations non-conformities from any predefined specifications and instructions should be registered, if applicable, and investigated promptly. Sometimes immediate corrections are taken before the investigation has been completed and the root cause determined. This is because an immediate action may be able to mitigate a serious risk or safety issue. The criticality classification of deviations and nonconformity is qualitative and simply based on definitions and simple questions. However, health authorities and regulatory guidance encourage organizations to classify deviations and nonconformities based on quality risk management criteria. The risk-based classification of an event helps to determine its criticality. It also helps to determine the level and scope of the investigation and the efforts needed to look into an event. This is very important, as there aren't unlimited resources to investigate every event. Simply focus on the most critical ones. In general, a risk assessment is a risk rating tool using a scoring system that can help to categorize an event with defined criteria. For example, you can use a risk assessment tool called FMEA, Failure, Modes and Effects Analysis, to categorize a deviation. The FMEA model calculates a risk rating using 3 factors: severity, S, probability of occurrence, P, and detectability, D. The risk rating is derived by multiplying the severity, S, probability of occurrence, P, and detectability. This risk rating is called a risk prioritization number, RPN. For example, the scoring of probability or likelihood could be the following: Regarding severity, the scoring of severity can be used to assess the impact on quality attributes. The same severity score could also be used to assess the potential risk to human health, as well as the potential loss of a customer, the potential environmental risk, etc. Regarding detectability, a similar approach can be used. So, the most important thing is that the classification and scope of an event may reflect the identified criticality level based on the risk priority number calculation. What is the purpose of this calculation? The objective is to categorize an event as one of the following: critical, major, minor, or incident. A critical deviation non-conformity is a deviation that has a significant impact on the quality attributes, critical process parameter, or equipment, and that can adversely impact patient health, personal safety, product safety and efficacy, and the environment. A critical deviation results in a product that endangers or poses a significant risk to the patient. Here is an example in pharmaceutical industry. Critical: product that does not meet the specifications. Product with evidence of contamination with other products that does meet specifications. A product that does not meet specifications or where there is evidence that the product has been contaminated with other substances. A major deviation nonconformity is a deviation with a moderate impact on the quality attributes, critical process parameter, or equipment control, where the impact on patients, personnel, or the environment is unlikely. A major deviation is a deviation that is not a critical deficiency. This means the patient is not at risk from this deficiency. Some examples of major deviations: violation of marketing authorization documents and specifications, pharmacopoeias, etc. Ineffective implementation of the required in-process controls during production. A release of a batch without a thorough investigation of a deviation. One example is when analytical methods or specifications used during analysis are not in line with the information registered and accepted by the relevant health authorities. Another example is when in-process controls do not effectively demonstrate the manufacturing process is under control to obtain a high-quality product. A final example is when a manufactured batch is released without completing an open investigation on a deviation. A minor deviation nonconformity is a deviation that has minimal impact on any quality attribute, critical process parameter, or equipment. An incident is when an event does not directly affect the product quality. In this phase, we are going to explore how to handle an investigation. The first question is, who takes care of the deviation and nonconformity? Processes that give rise to problems are rarely localized to a single department or function. To truly solve problems at their root, a cross-functional group composed of stakeholders from different departments, work tasks, and outputs must be established to examine every angle. This is why a steering team is usually created for every deviation nonconformity, with representatives and owners from all functional areas. Every member of the group can offer their expertise to guide the investigation. The team should collect data and conduct the investigation to determine what factors should and shouldn't be included in the analysis. This is why it is important to control, manage, and track all the available data and trends as part of the continuous quality journey. The overarching objective is to reduce variation and drive improvement. In this process, clear communication channels among team members are essential, with the proper measures in place to minimize bias. Be sure to avoid having interorganizational politics obstruct the free and open exchange of facts and ideas. From there, the deviation can be thoroughly investigated and the root cause promptly corrected. Now let's discuss the meaning of a root cause and how to implement root cause analysis during an investigation. A root cause is a factor that causes a nonconformity. It is the core issue that sets in motion the entire cause and effect reaction that leads to a nonconformity or an unplanned deviation. In an investigation, the goal is to determine the reason a problem occurred. This approach is called root cause analysis. Root cause analysis, RCA, is a systematic problem-solving process. It uses various tools and techniques to identify the sources of nonconformities, deviations, and look for a solution that addresses the problem at the root level. Effective RCA requires critical thinking and a multidisciplinary knowledge team. Both RCA and quality risk management principles should be applied during the investigation of deviations and nonconformities. There are a set of reliable methodologies for analyzing root causes. For example, process mapping, fault tree analysis, FTA, fishbone diagram, cause and effect, or Ishikawa, 5 whys, FMEA, failure mode, and effect analysis. Sometimes the true root cause or causes of a nonconformity deviation cannot be determined. In these cases, consideration is given to the most likely root cause or causes so that those can be addressed. Afterward, appropriate corrective actions and/or preventive actions, CAPAs, should be identified and taken in response to nonconformities investigations. And finally, these actions should be monitored and assessed for effectiveness in line with quality risk management principles. Let's dive into the different types of errors you may encounter during an investigation. Human errors are a common root cause of a deviation or nonconformity. Special care should be taken to ensure human error is the true underlying and actionable root cause. There are 2 types of human errors: errors of omission and errors of commission. Similarly, these errors can be intentional or unintentional. Errors of omission happen when someone fails to execute a task. This may be because of forgetfulness or inattention. These are inadvertent failures. Consider the example of a worker who forgot to note the temperature value of a reaction. Errors of commission happen when the action deviates from what is expected according to the procedures. Consider the example of a worker who stirred the contents of a reactor for 15 minutes when the procedure required 20 minutes of mixing. Unintentional errors happen unconsciously due to attention failure, memory problems, multitasking, exhaustion, stress, lack of training, etc. Intentional errors happen when someone decides to deviate from the established rules intentionally but without knowing the consequences, instead thinking that the deviation will be beneficial. It is different from sabotage or violation. Sabotage and violation happen when someone intentionally does harm. The deviation is deliberate in these cases with the intention to fail on purpose. In terms of errors, there are 4 possibilities: intentional error of omission, unintentional error of omission, intentional error of commission, unintentional error of commission. Some quality systems do not allow human error as a root cause. The idea is to prevent organizations from failing to address the root cause of most of these types of errors. When human error is the real root cause of an event, it should be used as an opportunity to improve the problem-solving process and foster a quality culture with smart quality initiatives. Then there are other types of errors that can happen: documentation, equipment, and processes. Regarding errors in documentation, sometimes the root cause of a problem is due to ineffective processes for creating, maintaining, and distributing the documentation of the quality management system. For example, ask yourself the following questions. Are the SOPs current or obsolete? Are the SOPs accurate, clear, and concise? Did employees participate in the elaboration or revision of the SOPs? Are the SOPs accessible at the point of use? Were new versions of the SOPs read and understood by employees? Were employees trained? Keep an eye on these questions. They can help you identify where the real problem is. Errors in equipment. Some may be related to equipment malfunction, breakdown, miscalibrated sensors, design or size, or placement deficiencies, lack of maintenance, inappropriate cleaning, and more. Errors in processes. In the life sciences, processes must follow strict guidelines that adhere to the design space developed during the design and development phase. To keep the process under control, all critical parameters and patterns must be within established ranges. If the parameters deviate from the design space, the product may not comply with the quality requirements. Proper critical process parameters are usually monitored to ensure the process is under control. Process-related errors lead to product non-compliance and final refusal. Sometimes they can lead to recalls and complaints due to missing process controls. Once the root cause is assigned, this phase checks the impact of the same product in other batches. A non-conformity could lead to other deviations. For example, if the deviation is related to an instrument breakdown during batch production, such as pH meter, then all batches manufactured since the last calibration check must be included in the investigation. This investigation can be established if you use an electronic quality management system, as it integrates events with other issues, such as change controls, calibration dates, other investigations, etc. Upon completion of the investigation, once the root cause or causes are known, it is the time to identify and document an action plan with the necessary corrections to avoid reoccurrence. Depending on the outcome of the risk assessment, sometimes no action is needed. In other cases, the action can be either corrective or preventive. Corrective actions are meant to address systemic problems. Preventive actions are preventive and generally used to avoid a future non-conformity. When the action is a change in the process, additional validation or revalidation is required. All validation activities generate data and evidence that will confirm the effectiveness of the corrective action to eliminate repetition of the deviation or future non-conformity. Effectiveness checks determine the success of the corrective actions. Remember that this phase corresponds to the C phase of the Deming cycle, PDCA, plan, do, check, and act. If the CAPA process is unsuccessful or only partially successful, another CAPA process must be initiated. The effectiveness of the CAPAs should be monitored and assessed in line with quality risk management principles at predefined intervals. It is important to understand that auditors and inspectors expect manufacturers to demonstrate that their quality system is effective. The system must enable them to identify problems quickly and implement effective corrective and preventive actions. The purpose of periodic reviews is to check all significant events, the corresponding investigations, and the effectiveness of the corrective and preventive actions taken. The reviews can be done by product or process type, equipment, department, etc. Every CAPA process should have a built-in effectiveness verification system to validate that the CAPA system is working. In turn, every CAPA should be monitored for effectiveness. If issues arise, further actions can be taken to correct them. For example, the department where the event originated should gather data over a period of time related to the effectiveness of the implemented action. The quality assurance department can also be involved in the review to check the effectiveness of the actions taken and to ensure no additional concerns have been introduced with the changes. That's all. Thank you for attending this course. I hope you found it useful and that you have learned what you expected. See you in other courses at Scilife Academy to continue your learning journey.